Satnam, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back to another in our continuing series. And if you're new to this program, just to give you a little overview, we will be momentarily doing 11 minutes of chanting of the mantra, the shabad, Dhan, Dhan, Ramdas Guru Jin Siriya Tene Savarya. And we will be doing that for connection, feeling that connection to each other around the world, and also for healing and for a possibility of bringing the presence of Guru Ramdas into our lives of compassion and humility through this time. And for those of you, again, who are new, I always introduce this practice as there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can simply sit and meditate and listen. You could chant the words along with me as I sing them. And I imagine momentarily, let me check the comments. Yes, and the words are in the chat, courtesy of Girandeep Kaur. And so if you need to refer to them, they are there. And another way you can do this is you can do it as a particular meditation using a particular mudra, which is a position with the hands. So you have the right thumb up, the left hand wraps around that thumb in a fist, but gentle, not tight. And then the right fingers come up along the back of the left hand. And you hold that gently and relaxed at the heart center with your elbows at your side relaxed. And you can have your eyes closed, or you could have them open to read the words, or you can focus with them just 1/10 open at the tip of your nose. And when it's done in that way, it's a meditation to release fear that you might be holding or anxiety about the future, about the current situation, just to release that and embrace the connection to the divine, feeling that Guru Ramdas is with us in each of our hearts as we sing these words. So afterwards, I'm going to talk for a while, but today I want to just give the heads up that I'll be talking about a shabad that is written about Guru Ramdas. And it is known by the last part of the main line, Nam ki badai de Guru Ramdas ko. So those words, I'm sure one of our loyal Sevadars will put those in the comments section later in this program. But for now, we're going to focus on chanting Dhan Dhan Ramdas Guru. So I hope you'll join us, and we'll begin. Dhanna, 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 Ramdas Guru. Dhanna, Dhanna, Ramdas Guru. Jin Siriya Tene Savarya, Jin Siriya Tene Savarya. Dhanna, 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 Ramdas Guru. Ramdas Guru, Ramdas Guru. Uri hoy karmat ap sirjan
kade tun sapar mariya Ram Kam krodh mar kade tun sapar mariya Dhan so tera dhan hai सच तेरा पैस तन सो तेरा तन है सच तेरा पैस सच तेरा पैस सच तेरा पैस
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. All right. So welcome those of you who joined us in these last few minutes while we were chanting together. And I'll be looking at your comments shortly. But before we do that, I want to Namaki Vadai, is that correct? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Vadai, yeah, it's the right one. Yeah. And if you put it up there, Kirandeep, I'll take a look at it just to be sure. But the first line of the shabad Kirandeep is Jako Mundantare. So if that's the one, then you're right. So let me talk a little bit about this shabad, and we'll go through the lines. But I wanted, for some of you, getting to know a little bit about the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, I'm sure is very meaningful. And others, perhaps you know some of this information already. But the Sri Guru Granth Sahib is the sacred text of the Sikhs that is more than just a book, more than just pages with words written on them. It embodies the wisdom, the very essence of what we recognize to be our living Guru. And in fact, we relate to this as being Shabad Guru, the Guru that is the word. And so if you go to a Gurdwara, any Gurdwara, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib is at the focal point, the epicenter of everything that goes on in the Gurdwara. And just as if we had still one of the living Gurus with us, we look to the Guru for guidance. And so the words that are there will inform, will guide us. And so this is an interesting, I don't want to call it a book. This is an interesting text, scripture is perhaps the right word, to look at, because it's not written only by practitioners who were on the path of a Sikh. There are scriptures included in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib that were written by writers from other traditions. So it has 1,430 pages in the volume, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. There are 8,800, did I say that right? 5,894 different compositions in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, written by 36 different authors. And of those 36 authors, 6 were Sikh Gurus. Guru Nanak, through Guru Arjan, and then plus Guru Tegh Bahadur. So those Gurus' writings, compositions were included in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. But there are also these other authors that I mentioned from other traditions. So there are compositions from 15 different what we call bhagats. And these were generally mystic poets, teachers, spiritual people who were on a path of consciousness. Most of them either lived just prior to Guru Nanak or around the same time as Guru Nanak. And then we have a group of authors, 11 authors, who are referred to as bhatts. And these are generally Hindu scholars who were living at the time of the Gurus, in Guru Arjan's court, mostly. And so they were there because they were drawn to the wisdom of the gurus, but they didn't embrace becoming Sikh so much. They were just included in the community, and their writing was recognized to be spiritually elevated enough to be embodied, to be included into the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, that their writing embodied the same consciousness as that of the other writings that were included. It was Guru Arjan who collected these together. And so he saw these writings of other people, and he knew them, perhaps knew them in person, and he brought their writings into what we now call the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib. At that stage, when Guru Arjan was compiling it, and when he finished his work, it was called the Adi Granth, meaning primal volume of wisdom, you could say. And later, Guru Gobind Singh then added the writings of his father, Guru Tegh Bahadur, the ninth Guru, and then it was called the Siddhi Guru Granth, and it was after Guru Gobind Singh had done that, and then he drew recognition to that as being the Guru from there on. Once he was no longer in his physical body, all Sikhs were then to recognize the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib as their Guru. So, after all of that, the reason I wanted to give you all that preamble is to talk about the fact that this composition that I'm going to talk about and sing in just a moment, Nam Ki Badai De, is written by a Bhat. His name was Mathura, and he lived during the time of Guru Arjan. And as I say, he was a Hindu scholar, but he was able to recognize the wisdom of Guru Arjan, and he was able to write about that same perspective in his words. And in fact, this is a composition that's in praise of Guru Ram Das. So I imagine he must have lived in that transition time when Guru Ram Das was still alive, and then Guru Arjan became Guru. I don't have the exact year dates of his life, but knowing that he was living around that time and he wrote about Guru Ram Das, I can imagine he must have been living at least some of the time when Guru Ram Das was Guru. And so he wrote this composition. And the first line in the composition is Jako mun dhandare firit sagala juga kabu kako pave atam paragasako. And he says in the translation, for his sake, meaning for the sake of the divine, the silent sages meditated and focused their consciousness, and wandering through all the ages, rarely if ever, their souls were enlightened. In other words, they were trying to attain that divine connection, and yet they did not quite have the formula, the methodology, the connection that would then give them that final connection to the divine fully. In the second line, he goes on to say, Ved Bani Sahita Biranj Jasagave Jako Siv Mun Gahena Tajat Kablasako. And this is in the hymns of the Vedas. So Ved, meaning Vedic writings from the Vedas. Bani, Ved Bani, the Vedas. Brahma, meaning that aspect of the creative aspect of God, sang the praises of the divine, which is an interesting kind of self-referencing loop of an aspect of God also praising the divine. And for the sake of the divine, Shiva also, silent sage, his place, so he meditated in the mountains. And there's a specific mountain range listed here, the Kailash Mountains. And these are part of the range of the Himalayas, whichever pronunciation. So then in the next line, he goes on to say, Jako Jogi Jati Siddha Sadhaka Aneka Tapa Jata Jot Bek Kai Firita Udasako. So here he's saying, and for the sake of the divine, the yogis, the celibates, the siddhas, meaning the yogis with powers, the seekers of all different kinds of knowledge, the countless sects of fanatics, some with matted hair, wearing religious garb of all kinds, and they wandered around as renunciates. Still they didn't have that connection. And then in the last line, he says, So tin Satguru Sukhabai Kirpa Dari Jia Nam Ki Badai De Guru Ram Das Ko. And he says, but that true Guru, meaning Guru Ram Das, with the grace of the divine, by the pleasure of the divine, was showered with that blessing. And then Guru Ram Das was able to manifest that divine presence, fully connected to the divine flow. So that's what this shabad is saying, and I'm going to sing it, and please feel free to sing along, and then we'll talk a little bit after.
Badai de Guru Ram Das ko, Naam ki badai de Guru Ram Das ko, Guru Ram Das ko. Jako mun tan tane firat sagala juga, Jako mun tan tane firat sagala juga, kamu kaku pawe atma pargas ko, kamu kaku pawe atma pargas ko, naam ki badai de Guru Ram Das ko, naam ki badai de Guru Ram Das ko, Guru Ram Das ko. Ved bani sahat ranj jas gaave, Ved bani sahat ranj jas gaave, Jako siv mun gana kabulas ko, Jako siv mun gana the jat kamalas ko, naam ki badai de Guru Ram Das ko, naam ki badai de Guru Ram Das ko, Guru Ram जाको जोगी जाति सिद्ध सदक अनेक तप जाको जोगी जाति सिद्ध सदक अनेक तप जत चूट पेग किए फिरत उदास को जत चूट पेग किए फिरत उदास को नाम की बधाई दे गुरु रामदास को नाम की बधाई दे गुरु रामदास को गुरु रामदास को सो तिन सतगुर सुख भाई कृपाधारी जी सो तिन सतगुर सुख भाई कृपाधारी जी नाम की पिताई ने गुरु रामदास को नाम की पिताई ने नाम की पिताई ने नाम की पिताई ने गुरु रामदास को नाम की पिताई दे गुरु रामदास को नाम की पिताई दे गुरु रामदास को गुरु रामदास को गुरु रामदास को
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So now I'm going to take a look at your comments and if anybody has questions. So I want to also say hi to people, especially those of you who are joining us perhaps for your first time. Lata Singh from Durban, South Africa. Very nice. And Indokar from France. Welcome. Mayra, sorry if I murdered that name, sorry. And Hayan, I think you've been here before. Welcome back. And Mansangeet, of course, one of our regulars, Margaret Pav Singh. Thank you for putting that shabad there, Pav Singh. And Margaret, welcome. And Biplop Waheguru. And of course, Kirandeep is here. And Sahib Deep. Yes, I've seen you here before too. And Kirpal Singh from Daytona Beach, regular. And we've got Waldenira Satnam and Satkirtan from the Netherlands, and Judith and Gulzan and Jesse and Flory, and that's it. Well, welcome to you all. Many of you are regulars, and I'm very grateful that you make the time on a regular basis to join us. It's so nice to feel like connected to a group, a family, really. And okay, we're getting a few more people putting their name there. Lydiane and Chico, great. So it's nice if you have next time when you put your name there to say hi, if you can put where you're from, where you're logged in from. It's nice to see how far our reach is and how widely connected we are around the world. South Africa I saw, and France today. That's great. But I know that we have people from South America and perhaps China here as well. So it's really nice to see you all here. Um, I want to. I didn't see any questions, so I'm going to just talk a little bit more about some of the themes that came up for me at least in this shabad that we just were talking about and singing, Nam Ki Badai Day. Um, so one of the things that I'm focused on with this is the author to start with, because I don't know much about him, but I think it's wonderful that at the time of when the gurus were living, that there was a very open feeling about who could be recognized, who could be included in gatherings, in Sangat. It was clearly the tradition to have people like this person who wrote this, who was of Hindu origin, but also many of the musicians that were in the courts of the gurus were of Muslim tradition. And I had a guest on my other program on Friday that I do called Home Kirtan and Chat a few weeks back, and his name, a young man, his name is Kirit Singh, and he has a project called the Mardana Project. And if you know anything about the history of early Sikh history, you'll know that Mardana was a Muslim musician who traveled and accompanied Guru Nanak as he traveled, and established the tradition of having Muslim musicians in the court of the gurus. And that continued for a long time. And in fact, up until the time of partition, which if you don't know anything about, you might want to Google the partition of India, when after the long Raj of Britain, of England, over the ruling over India, that when they finally relinquished their imperialist hold on India, they negotiated a dividing up of the country, of the actual geography of India, into, at that time, 3 separate countries. And they divided most importantly, they divided the north western area of India, which was the Punjab. They divided that in half, and or even more than half, went to what is now Pakistan. And so in doing that, there was huge turmoil created during the time of partition, where there was suddenly, after generations or eons of living together, different spiritual traditions, Islam, Hindu, and Sikh, all getting along fairly well. And then at the time of partition, there was distrust, and there was sectarian violence on both sides, on all sides. And no one can walk away innocent from that story. And so there were many Hindus and Sikhs who were living in what is now Pakistan, who, fearing for their life, fled would be a better word, to India, south. And there were many Muslims who migrated toward Pakistan. And so the group of musicians who had for generations served and played music sung Gurbani, done Gurbani Kirtan in in the gurdwaras throughout Punjab. Many of them had to flee, and they went to Pakistan. And we're talking about a group called the Rababis, because they played the rabab, which is a stringed instrument. And welcome, Baragat Priya. Nice to see you with us. And Diego and Quinyan. Nice to see you from Boulder. So these musicians had to flee. And so it was a big loss. And so this shabad that we sang today really made me think about that, and how I don't know how to fix it. You know, it's not simply, you can't just undo some of these things. But I hope that there is some small step in the future to welcoming some of these rababis back to be able to play kirtan in the gurdwaras of the Sikh diaspora, you know, around the world. And you know, if Pakistan can be more open in its borders between India and Pakistan, perhaps more Sikhs can visit there and organize programs for those rababis. I think that there is a time and place for everything, and so I'm hoping that the time will come when these kind of changes can happen, to welcome back into the fold some of these people who were marginalized, who were put aside. And, you know, the climate of politics is difficult to navigate sometimes for spiritual people. You know, we want everyone to get along, but in reality, the world isn't always like that. And so my prayer is that somehow the door will open so that we can have a more universal inclusion of people who are just as touched by the words of our gurus and love to sing them, and they represent a very ancient tradition and knowledge. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Well, I think we're going to wrap up today. I want to just remind you that tomorrow I'm going to have a very interesting guest with me in the Home Kirtan Chat program, and his name is Ram Singh, and he is born in Africa, in Togo, grew up, I think, mainly in Marseille, in France, and is a very well-respected musician and teacher, a teacher of Kundalini Yoga, and a musician, a kirtan musician, throughout Europe and also in Africa now. He's gone back and established programs there, teaching, and wherever he goes, he brings his music as well. And so we'll get to hear some of his music. And if you're not familiar, you might want to Google his music. It's available through Spirit Voyage and Satnam Versand in Europe. So, and I imagine you can find it on streaming sites too. I haven't actually looked there, but anyway, we'll be having a very interesting conversation. I've known him for several years and played music with him, and he's a beautiful soul, and you'll all get a chance to meet him a bit tomorrow. So I look forward to seeing some of you there, I hope. And otherwise, we'll be back on Tuesday and Thursday next week. Please be safe, be well, stay at home if you can, and all blessings. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Satnam.